Maes Primary is a large school on a housing estate called Broadlands, which lies to the west of Bridgend. The majority of our children live on this estate, and our school is at the centre of it. The name Broadlands was taken from the two farms which worked the land where the estate is now situated for hundreds of years prior to the houses being built. You can probably just about make out on the far right of the map Broadlands Vawr. There was also a Broadlands Vawr. The estate was constructed in 2001 on the farmland, with more streets and houses being added for several years afterwards. Being a relatively new area, it is pretty difficult to find historical information about the immediate vicinity. Unfortunately, we do not have the rich historical setting that many other primary schools in Wales can utilise to develop their knowledge of local history. Although some of our children may be familiar with some of the historical features of the nearby small village of Llalliston, which has existed since Norman times. Previous Year 2 history-based topics have included ancient Egypt and the Great Fire of London. However, at the start of this term, our Year 2 teachers felt that the children in their classes didn't have a good understanding of their local area and its history, so they planned a topic to try to develop this. Some of our foundation phase staff have developed the belief that in order for our children to be able to comprehend events in other places in the world, ideally, this should always be linked to their own local area and experiences to give it context. This led to our Year 2 staff feeling that perhaps if their children knew what their community was like many years ago and how it became what it is today, they would be more able to understand the world history topics they would encounter in Key Stage 2. This presentation will now show an outline of the steps our teachers and children took to learn about the Broadlands area in order for those children to have a better sense of their own community, what it used to be like and how it got to be the way it is now. The project began with a home task which asked the children to consider the routes they take to school each day. The focus of this was to get them to look at local landmarks as a way of noticing the features of where they live. Some children made short videos, some wrote instructions, and some made maps. They then shared these with the rest of their class. Following this, the two Year 2 classes took a walk around the Broadlands area. They looked at all the landmarks and thought about what made up their community. They then returned to school and wrote recounts of what they'd seen. One of the teachers then used social media to appeal for information and resources linked to the Broadlands area. She put a message out asking local people to help. The school then received some books, photos of the area just as building work began, and a map from 1878 of the Broadlands area of Bridgend, which the children really enjoyed looking at. Next, the children looked at the book Through the Window and examined how the locality in the story changed through time as a way of introducing the idea to the children. Following this, they looked at the old photos of the Broadlands area, showing it as a farm, then a building site, then a smaller housing estate, then finally the large estate that exists today. The photos were provided by a person from the community who saw the changes from her own back garden and took photos to document them. The children were surprised by how their area used to look. The next activity undertaken by the children was to spend some time looking at photographs of Broadlands in the past and Broadlands in the present. The children were encouraged to notice the differences between them and then also to identify positives and negatives from the different eras, as you can see from the example work shown on the screen. Following this, the children were asked to think of questions they would like to ask the resident who had seen the Broadlands estate being constructed. They wrote their questions in their books, and then a selection of these were emailed to the resident, who replied much to the children's delight. The children were very excited when they received the local residents' replies to their questions. They shared these together in class, and this helped the children to understand that decisions made in the past have affected their present. They also understood that some of the residents in the area were very sad to see the loss of the beautiful farmland. On evaluating this project, the Year 2 staff felt that by examining the local area in this way and by making clear links between the history and the geography of the locality, the children have significantly improved their understanding of where they live, what it was like in the past, and how it came to be the way it is today. So, how has this project informed our school, and what are our next steps? Our school staff are organised into areas of learning teams. The Humanities team recently discussed how we feel strongly that when building our new curriculum, we need to further develop our pupils' understanding of Welsh history and heritage by starting with the children's immediate area and then extending this out to South Wales, Wales as a whole, Great Britain, and then the world, when teachers feel the pupils are developmentally ready for this. Our senior leadership team have also decided that for next year we should have an overarching whole school emphasis. The details of this are still being finalised, but we are looking at whether we actually specify that in certain progression steps the learning is kept to local and then extended to outer areas as the children move through the school. We are also considering whether a start with the locality approach would work well and benefit our older pupils. For example, if our Year 6 children were to study World War II, we could begin by looking at the Island Farm Prisoner of War camp, where the Great Escape happened during that era. The camp is located about a mile from our school, so would be a perfect resource and starting point for the work.